Hi everyone, welcome back to So Arizona. I was out admiring my rows of onions recently and I noticed that quite a few of my plants are developing flowers. If you're noticing little flowers on your onions as well and are wondering why that happens, today's video is going to explain why onions bolt and what you can do about it. Onions are biennial, which means that they function on a 2-year cycle. The first year, when you start the seed or the transplant, onions will form a bulb. And the second year, onions will put all of the energy that they stored in that bulb into producing a flower and seeds. Bolting happens when onions decide that it's time to flower and produce seeds. Certain environmental factors can trigger this, and we will talk about those in just a minute. This flower formation might look beautiful, but it's bad news for your harvest. And that's because that flower stalk will extend all the way down into the onion bulb. Once an onion bolts, the bulb stops forming and it can become very woody and will not store well. So those storage onions that you were planning on are just not going to happen. If I take one of these bolted onions inside and cut it in half, you'll see the flower stalk continues down into the bulb, forming this more fibrous center. Don't waste the onion. You can still use the onion bulb once you remove that center stalk, and I will talk about ways that you can use and preserve your bolted onions in just a minute. Onion bulb formation is primarily influenced by 2 environmental factors, and that is day length and temperature. During the cool season, when you start your onion seeds or transplants outside, the onion plant will grow slowly and steadily, but it won't form a bulb. It is the lengthening of days during the spring and summer that triggers the formation of the bulb to begin. I am sure that you've noticed when shopping for onions that there are terms like short day and long day and intermediate or day neutral. Places in the north that have longer days are better suited for long day onion varieties, and places in the south, like southern Arizona, are better suited for short day onions. Temperature is also an important factor when it comes to bulb formation in onions and also in bolting. When temperatures are above 75, the onion plant will respond by forming a bulb quickly. This explains why when you're walking in your garden and you're looking at your onion rows and admiring them, you start to see that the onions are getting bigger and you can see the shoulders poking out of the soil. And that's because the plants are responding happily to the lengthening days during the warm season. Onions can tolerate a light frost, which is why we grow them during the cool season. But if you have temperatures that are fluctuating from below 50 degrees Fahrenheit or so, and then up into warmer temperatures, for more than 10 days, you're going to find that your onions are triggered to bolt and form a flower rather than forming the bulb. Since onions will only start to form a bulb when lengthening days and warming temperatures arrive, timing for planting them in the fall is everything. The number of onion leaves present at bulb initiation is important. Onion leaves are the green tops. More foliage means more photosynthesis and therefore more food available to produce a bigger bulb. So planting your seeds or transplants or onion sets, whatever it is you choose, as early as you can in the fall, once temperatures start to cool consistently, is going to be an important factor for getting the biggest onions that you can in the spring. The main goal here in southern Arizona is to start your onions as soon as the temperatures are consistently cool. And consistency is the key word there. If you have temperatures that are fluctuating between cold and hot, as they do in the late fall and early spring in southern Arizona, you are probably going to get onions that bolt rather than bulk up. This spring in my garden has been such a roller coaster. It was almost 100 degrees 2 weekends ago, and then we actually just got another very late frost a couple of days ago, and my onions have been triggered to start bolting like crazy. Although temperature and day length are the primary environmental factors that can cause onions to bolt, there are other environmental factors that can cause that problem as well. Things like water stress, either too little or too much water, or nutrient deficiencies in the soil, or too little sunlight, things that tell the onion that the conditions are not right and that they need to reproduce themselves because they are not going to be able to grow any further. Lengthening days in the spring and inconsistent temperatures are recipes for your onion bolting. You can't do anything about that, but you can make the best of the situation. First off, plant the right onion variety. Always look for short day onions if you're gardening in southern Arizona. You may also be able to get away with day neutral or intermediate, but I think that short day onions are your best bet. I'm growing varieties like Texas Early Grano, Yellow Granix, and Red Creole. These are bred for short day conditions and are less likely to bolt if timed correctly. So let's talk about the timing of planting your onions. The second thing you can do is to plant your onion seeds, transplants, or sets on time in southern Arizona. If you're starting seeds indoors, you can do that from August through November. If you're sowing seeds directly outside, you can do that from November through December. And if you are starting with onion transplants, then you can also plant those out in November. But this is all temperature dependent, and as you know, temperatures vary wildly from season to season in southern Arizona, and so the temperatures that we experienced in November last fall may not be the temperatures that we experience next fall. If you're still having consistently hot temperatures or fluctuations that are above 75 and then below again, hold off on planting those onions until temperatures calm down. If you live in the Phoenix area, then you will be starting your onions a little sooner than I will down here in Tucson. The last thing to remember is that your onion plants are divas. Anything that stresses the plant out can trigger bolting. So stay on a consistent watering schedule and don't provide too little or too much water. Make sure that your soil has plenty of nutrients for your onions to grow because they are heavy feeders, and mulch to make sure that you maintain a consistent soil temperature and moisture level. If your onions bolt, don't panic. You can still use them. You may not be able to store them as you were hoping to, but there are still plenty of ways that you can utilize those onions so you don't waste them. The easiest thing you can do is pull a bolted onion and chop up the tops and use them as scallions. I put them in salads and in soups and on my omelets. There are lots of ways that you can use those just as you would fresh green onions from the store. Another way that I use them is to chop up the tops and the bottoms, dehydrate them, and then I will either store them whole in a jar to add to soups and stews and things like that during the winter time, or I can grind them up and use them as onion powder later on. You can also use the bulb fresh, just as you would any storage onion, by chopping it up and using it in any recipe that calls for cooked onions. Just make sure that you remove that central flower stalk before you do that. Lastly, you can just leave your onion plant be and let it bloom. It's beautiful. It's a pollinator magnet, accommodating even the smallest of pollinators. And once they do their work, you have onion seeds you can save for next year. Just keep in mind that onion seeds have a low shelf life or viability, so if you want to use them, make sure you do so next season for the best germination. Bolting onions might feel like a garden fail, but you probably didn't do anything wrong as long as you watered consistently and provided good soil and sunlight. You really can't control the weather that Mother Nature gives you. If you're interested in going into much more detail about growing onions from start to finish, you can check out my video all about that. I will link it in the description box below. I'm Kara from So Arizona. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy gardening.